Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to our third session, our third series in our E2 comprehensive series, where we're going to wrap up things about talking about the E2, some other issues, minor issues and major ones that maybe we didn't cover in the first two episodes, in order to help you have a solid understanding about what the E2 entails and whether this is a good route for you to pursue. So, in the previous episode, we talked a lot about source of funds, funding requirements, how you spend the money, stuff like that. So that occupied the majority of the previous episode. Today, we're going to talk about some of the remaining issues that might be out there and questions that often come up with clients related to the process. So let's get started. What else do we need to keep in mind when we're looking at an E2? The first thing is whether you're looking to change your status in the US or apply at the embassy. People say, what's the better way to go? A lot depends on the individual client and their circumstances. The difference is if you apply in the US, let's say you have a tourist visa, you got to the US and you say, Charles, we're here, we want to file for the E2. Okay, we can do that. What's required? We have to wait 90 days since your entry into the US. We can't file a change of status. We can't file the E2 petition before that. So we've got to wait 90 days. During that 90 days, you can't work. You can be a tourist, so you can relax, do all you want, but technically you can't legally work. You file the E2. You can do premium processing in the US where you get an answer within 15 working days for an extra $2,805. So that's a great thing. Within 15 days, boom, you'll get an answer, you'll know. So within month 4, you'll probably know if your E2 has gotten approved or not. I'm willing to bet if we've taken you on as a client and you're filing in the US, I can say with probably 99.5% likelihood you're going to get approved. That's just our overall statistic. So we've been doing this in 15 years. We've only had one denial for somebody who was changing their status in the US. How many denials have we had overseas at the embassy? It really depends on the country. For example, it could be as little as 0, such as in the UK or Canada, or it could be as high as maybe 15-20% denials for clients from Armenia. And again, this gets back to the issue I talked about before. If it's an economically less developed country, they're much stricter, they're much more skeptical and much more challenging of our clients. And that interview is super important. And it's super important, and sometimes I think the decision's even made before our client steps up to the window. I think they've made a decision. For the most part, we're going to deny you. We're not going to give you the visa. We don't care how impressive you're going to speak during the interview. I hate to say that, but I think in many cases, that's probably the case. Now, why do they do that? Well, they look at your history, your travel history, they look at your ties to your country, all these other factors. And sometimes I think they're overly pessimistic and skeptical about clients and their willingness or plans to come back to the US. So like I said, if you go to the embassy, I'm not saying your chances are high you're going to get denied. It's just, it's more unpredictable. You're changing your status in the US, there's no interview, everything is under our control as your attorney. And like I said, we've had one denial, literally one in 15 years. Whereas overseas, just a variety of factors that could affect things. And even if you're from a relatively developed country, there might be something in your personal past that will attract the officer's attention that would not attract the attention of the officer here and might cause a problem. Because here's the thing, even though it's all one government, each agency looks at things from their own perspective. At the embassy, it's the State Department. And they're looking at it from the perspective of, is this person tacitly, secretly planning to immigrate to the US? They're trying to avoid people who are trying to immigrate. If you're here in the US changing your status, the immigration service here doesn't care about that too much. Their logic is, well, if the person's here, they're here. We're not going to kick them out of the country if they're here legally. We're not going to force them to prove all the ties that they have with their home country and ensure that they're going to leave because they're already here. What are you going to do? So that's kind of the difference in mentalities, and I think that explains the discrepancies between success rates overseas and in the US. Now, it might be a situation where the client says, hey, we want to go to the embassy because we want to get the visas, because we want to travel a lot. And I understand that. But let's say, there's language issues. Or let's say the main applicant might not do well in an interview selling him or herself. Because you have to understand that when you're going to an embassy interview, especially for the E2, you in effect are selling your business, selling your product, selling your vision. You've got to convince the officer that you really have a viable business. This is going to be a good business. You're going to make money and you're going to benefit the US. There is no interview in the US when you're changing status. You don't have to worry about that stuff. But when you're going to the embassy, yeah, it's a bit of salesmanship, and you've got to convince that officer that not only are you not planning to stay in the US, but you've got to convince them this is a good business model. I'm going to make money, I'm going to help other Americans make money, and I'm going to help the US economy. With this issue, there could be challenges. What challenges, for example? Well, let's say you don't live in your home country. And let's say and that's an issue we need to discuss. Let's say you reside in Portugal, but you're originally from, I don't know, Ukraine. And you don't speak Portuguese, and your English is really weak too. That could be a problem because at the embassies, they always will speak English and the local language. Whether they would speak a third language is very unlikely. So let's say you speak Ukrainian and Russian. They most likely do not have Ukrainian or Russian speakers on staff in the Portuguese embassy. And they do not always allow you to bring in interpreters. Each embassy is a little bit different. Maybe not scare us, but give us second thought as to whether it's worthwhile going to an interview at the embassy. So if the client has the ability to get to the US on a tourist visa, we might strongly advocate filing for a change of status here because we're just not too sure how that interview is going to go. Now, if you don't have a tourist visa and you're not able to get to the US, we don't have a choice and you're going to have to go forward with the interview. But these considerations are things that we take into account when we're advising our client where to best apply, whether to apply at the embassy in the US or some other option. Here's some other information that is super important, and this was a change that just came about in September of 2025. And this regards where you can apply for your visa. In the past, most embassies were very flexible. You could always apply in your home country where your passport is, but they were very flexible as to other countries. It's called third-party countries. So let's say you happen to be going to a conference in Brazil, and you said, hey, can I sign up for an interview for my E2 while I'm in Brazil? As long as the Brazilian embassy or the US embassy in Brazil replies back and says, yeah, sure, it's not a problem, you could do it. In September 2025, State Department changed their rules and they said from now on, you can only apply in your country of nationality, where your passport's from, or if you have residency, official documents confirming you have residency, you have a work permit in another country, could you apply there? So let's say you have a work visa in Dubai, and you're working and living there. Okay, in that case, you could apply. Assuming, of course, that they would accept E2 visas. That's also an issue. Not every consulate, if you're in a country that is not a treaty country, it's quite likely that consulate will not do E2 visas. So for example, United Arab Emirates is not an E2 country. So even if a client would have residency there, and we ourselves are not sure, we're in the process of clarifying this, whether UAE issues E2 visas, but it's quite likely they don't because there's no treaty with United Arab Emirates. So if you happen to be a resident of a country that doesn't have a treaty with America for an E2, you might be out of luck as well. So this is also a consideration to keep in mind about where we can apply and whether we should apply, in your home country, your country of residency, or here in the US. Now, how do we work with our clients, right? Because as intimidating as some of this might sound, hopefully we can relieve you of most of the challenges involved here. And like I said earlier in our episodes, we guide and hold the hand of our clients as much as we can and do as much as is possible. So we can register the company, we can get the tax ID. The banks won't allow us to open the bank account for your company, so you'll have to be here for that. Otherwise, in terms of the strategy, where to apply, how much should you invest, what expenditures you should make and when. We guide you during the whole process to make sure there really are no unexpected problems coming forward. And then of course, that final issue that we were just talking about, where is it better to apply? Apply in the US, do a change of status, apply at the embassy. Can we do it at the embassy of residency? Do we have to go to your embassy of nationality? Are there any language issues, any other personal issues that might affect your ability to be convincing and have a very successful interview? All those issues we work out with you in order to ensure a successful conclusion to your case. We are very transparent and we're very interactive with our clients. I know people often have complaints about lawyers that they have to wait a week or 2 weeks for their lawyer to get back to you. Believe me, if I or anybody on my staff did not get back to a client within a week, they would not be working with us the next day. So we're very responsive with our clients, and I think our clients appreciate that. And we treat our clients like family. Customized, individualized attention to ensure the best results for them and their families. So hopefully this was a good overview for the E2. I wouldn't be surprised if you still might have some questions, because there's always certain scenarios that might come up that I might not have thought of. But hopefully this gives you a good grounding of what it entails. And if this is something you would be interested in, you can reach out in the links below to set up a consultation or to take the next steps in fulfilling your goals of getting an E2 or a similar visa or status here in the US. Again, my name's Charles Raether, and we look forward to working with you.